three, two. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our video titled, Should I Quit My Job, Start My Own Business, and Travel the World? I have Kayla and I have Jeff here today. So the purpose of this video is just really to give freelancers and people who are looking to make the jump to freelancing a little bit of insight and guidance on how to build their business and chase their dreams. So this is just going to be more than anything a conversation between the three of us. I'll introduce us and then hopefully we'll answer some of your questions and encourage you to get out there and do what you love. Kayla, you first. Please introduce yourself and tell us where you are and your job title.
Okay, so hi everybody, I am Kayla. I am currently based in Girona in Spain, but originally I am from Australia, from the west side, Perth. But my current job title, I'm a marketing freelancer, and that includes a lot of different things.
Perfect. And what are your life goals right now? Like if you had to pick one sick goal, what's your fave goal?
Top goal would be I'm really seeking adventure and sort of in the form of travel. Yeah.
Awesome. All right, Jeff, your turn. Your location, your job title, where you are.
Hey everyone, my name's Jeff. I am currently in Arizona, but I'm traveling right now, thank goodness, because I'm also searching for some adventure and just mixing it up and being able to travel more easily, as Kayla mentioned. I'm from the US originally. I was born and raised in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, but as soon as I graduated from the University of Minnesota, where I got to luckily meet Madison, I moved to Chile. So I've been living down in South America in Chile for 10 years. This July 1st, I'm actually doing a 10-year anniversary party for my Chilenidad down with my friends when I get back to Valparaiso. So I'm located currently in the city of Valparaiso, but I did live 2 years in southern Chile before I decided to lay down some roots more permanently in the beautiful port of Valparaiso.
Yay. Okay, and I need a current life goal, something that you're working on.
Yeah, so something I'm working on right now, and I think a lot of people that will be watching this are also interested in how to grow my business online. I want to be able to just leave and be in whichever hemisphere I fancy at the time and just rework my classes and be able to continue with my life and with my mobile business online. That's a huge current life goal and more passion project goal. I'm looking to start studying more languages. More specifically, I really want to pick up German. I think that's the next language I would like to study. That's a
That's
goal of mine.
amazing.
Mhm.
German's hard.
It's so hard. That's why I'm
Hard.
into it. I need to step up my language level. I'm ready for German.
That's great.
Okay.
Okay, so my name is Madison. Most of you will know me. I am living in Girona, Spain, about 7 minutes away from Kayla, walking distance right now. I'm from the US. I grew up in Minnesota. Before living here, I spent probably around 6 years traveling around the world, backpacking, kind of living places. So I lived a little in Costa Rica. I lived in the Cayman Islands. And Spain has really been the first place that I've called home, right? So it's been an interesting journey for me going from moving around a lot to a little bit more stability. I am a marketing consultant. That's what I call myself, just like Kayla. There's a lot of different things that go into that role. And I feel like our job titles may be like a little fluid depending on like what you're doing. But technically I'm a marketing consultant. And my life goal right now, I'm working on leading yoga retreats. And I was trying to think of like a specific goal because I'm not that type of person to set specific goals at all. But I was like, in 3 years or less, I would like to be leading 4 yoga retreats per year. So it's kind of an interesting topic of discussion too, because obviously we're going to talk about building your own business. I do marketing, but in this sense, I'm going to be marketing my own business, which is a weird luxury almost at this point in time. Yeah, as we move into kind of our conversation, I will let Jeff ask some questions to Kayla and I will kind of talk a little bit more about what we do. But before we get into that, I just want to talk to Kayla a little bit about, and we'll cross over more, but where you first started when you were building your business. So what was the first thing that made you want to be a freelancer?
It was a mistake, to be totally honest. And I know a lot of people maybe go into business or starting their own business with more purpose and a plan, but I honestly, I sort of fell into it. In 2020, COVID classic, I'd actually quit my full-time job to go traveling. And I was so certain in March that I was going to get on a plane. I was flying to Lisbon from Australia, which was like a very long flight, so I was like committed. And 3 days before I was meant to fly out, Australia completely shut down. Everyone overseas was asked to come back, and so I was like, "Ooh, what now?" um, I'm going to stay in WA in Western Australia, and I decided to take 9 months off. And then in about September that same year, I had someone, friend of a friend, kind of contact me and say, "Hey, I'm looking for some marketing stuff, a website, a logo. Could you help me?" And I was like, "Well, I'm not doing much else, so sure."
Perfect.
And that's honestly how I started, just by chance and by someone contacting me, and I enjoyed it and just went with the flow.
That's great. And Jeff, so what made you want to make this leap as well to start your own business?
Yeah, actually, and I was just thinking, I don't think I formally said what I'm doing in Chile currently, but I've been working as an online language professor pretty much since my second year at the University of Minnesota. I was doing a lot of volunteer hours teaching English to Latino and Latina immigrants in the Minneapolis area. And that's really what kind of, I would say, kind of culminated into this life path that I have. I started pretty early. I knew I wanted to graduate from the University of Minnesota and immediately abandon the United States and try not to look back because of the loan grace period and just not getting involved in this kind of corporate chain or more of a 9 to 5, 40-hour a week job, which I figured was like, that was my fallback plan, right? I think most people go into it like,
Yeah.
I'm going to pay off my loans and I'm going to work the corporate ladder and then I'm going to move to Lisbon and live my, freelance life. I looked at it the other way. I'm like, I need to take advantage of, my recent Spanish knowledge and the fact that I have a 6 month grace period on my loans and try this like abroad plan. And if I fall flat on my face, like I can go back to the corporate ladder. It's always waiting for me. I'm a US citizen. I have the privilege and the right to work in this country. So I did it kind of the reverse. And I would say that teaching English to Latino and Latina people from the Clues organization was the name of this.
Okay.
So it's a huge social service and nonprofit organization that works to ease the transition into the sometimes bitter cold individualist US culture for these very loving and open and charismatic Latino and Latina immigrants who are used to a much more sociable type of a culture, I
Sure.
guess I could say.
Right.
And typically not used to the cold climate of Minnesota. So it's just like this whole lovely, warm community where everyone can like help each other grow. So I grew by giving social service hours, which I needed for service learning projects in the university. And I also grew obviously in my Spanish speaking. And then they would grow through that because they could apply for better jobs after having taken 2 years of English teaching with me.
Okay,
So
cool.
that's how I got started. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. So I asked this because, and I will share mine very briefly. It's not very long. I was working my corporate job. So I worked for a marketing firm for 1 year right out of college. Actually, not right out. I messed around for a while, but so like maybe say after a year of bartending and serving, I was like, I should probably get a real job with this degree that I still haven't paid for. And I was sitting in my office and I looked out the window and it was a beautiful summer's day. And I was like stuck in this office. And I was like, this can't, this can't be it. This can't be like what my life is about. I can't be inside on a summer's day every single day looking out the window like longing for something different, right? And so for me that was really the catalyst. I was like I can't do it. And I think that everybody, depending maybe whether it's this wonderful thing that pops in your life as like an opportunity like Kayla, or maybe something where you knew like deep down you're like, okay, this is what I'm going to try and do this, which is what Jeff did, which thankfully, or if you have like this aha moment where you're like, fuck this, I'm out. Like I'm out. All of these are beautiful ways to, I don't know, I think listen to your heart. And sometimes we're so afraid to acknowledge that want because it goes against what we may have been taught, right? It goes against what we thought we were going to do, or the goals and the things we wanted to do with our life. So I encourage anyone that's watching this to think like if you've had that moment or if you've had that opportunity or if it's something that's been simmering for a long time, like maybe now is the time to start being like, oh, okay, like I think we should give this little thought. So moving forward, I'll have Jeff take over. He'll ask some questions and we'll kind of talk about what our businesses look like. And then we'll go from there about how we've sort of grown and some of the struggles probably that we go through because no matter
We
what,
do.
it's struggles, right?
As always, absolutely. Awesome. Well, thank you, Madison, for that amazing intro. I'm already super excited to have met Kayla, and I can't wait to ask these questions and figure out more about both of your businesses. Because Madison, I follow you, of course, on socials, so I know a little more, but we haven't really talked in person probably since a couple years after Buenos Aires,
Gosh,
probably
yeah,
before
it's been
graduation.
ages. Yeah.
hmm All right. So we talked a little bit about how everyone's come to this decision to be a freelancer, but I want to know, Madison, specifically, what kind of services do you provide, and how did you decide that that was going to be, what you want to work with?
Yeah, so when I started, I had been working at this marketing firm who made me do virtually everything for them, and I had no skills. So I was trying to learn everything on the fly for them day after day. They're like, "We need a website, we need this, we need this." And I was just going like, "Okay, sounds good. Like, I'll figure it out." And I kind of carried that with me into my business. Like I decided to start opening my own marketing business with knowledge of a bunch of random things, and as I got more clients, I found that they also asked for weird random things like, I need help with Google Ads. I need help with this. So I kind of came into it with a mentality of, I'll try to learn everything that I can learn. Right. And I needed money. So I'm whatever you'll pay me to do, I will learn to do. Great. And so now I think I'm almost like 8 years in now. I'm in a place where I'm like, doing the things that I love. So I build websites, I write a lot of everything. My favorite thing I love to write is emails. I love writing marketing emails. It's not like a really high ticket item, but I love it. I have someone who does social media for me. I have an assistant. She runs the social media most of the time because I don't enjoy that. So it's kind of if someone comes to me and they have a problem, I try to do like the big stuff, the website builds, things like that. And then other things I try to outsource and I have people who are really talented. And I'm like, man, if someone's better at social media than me, like Kayla, I'm like, I'm gonna send them to those people because like they actually enjoy it and they're really good at it. So that's kind of the summary of like how I chose. It was pretty much by joy and by learning random things. And
Mhm.
it worked for me. It just took a while to narrow that down.
Right. And it came out of you having worked more in corporate marketing and,
Yeah,
like you said, grabbing at all these skills and trying to just absorb what you could while you were in that position.
yeah, completely. Because when you first start out in a marketing firm, you're like the very bottom rung, and they're like, "We need
Yeah.
all of this stuff done," and I'm like, "Okay, I'll just figure it out." Because I had a degree in English lit. Like,
Yeah.
the, all I could do was write, and really, that's probably why my favorite things still revolve around like writing web copy and writing, because that's the root of like why I came to marketing. So.
Right. Very good. And Kayla, you mentioned this a little bit. I think you had said it kind of you fell into it because people had reached out for services for you. But tell me a bit about that. If you do anything different, if you offer services that Madison doesn't, and if there were any other things that really pushed you into deciding to work in marketing.
Yeah, so actually, I probably didn't explain how I got into marketing in the first place. But I mean, I didn't study English lit like you, Madison, but I studied psychology and marketing. And I didn't really I liked psychology, but I didn't really want to pursue a career in that sort of field. So straight after uni, I got a job with an SEO agency, a digital marketing agency, and started my career as a copywriter. And then from there, I worked client side as like in-house marketing. So for about 5 years, I was doing that, and I changed to a few different jobs. And my last job, I was an in-house marketing manager for a solar company in
Mhm.
Australia. So that means, yeah, like you said, Madison, you really when you start, you're doing all the stuff, you
Yeah,
know, you're
everything.
learning all the things, and if you don't know how to do it, like as an in-house marketing person, you got to learn how to do it or find someone who can help you do it. So I think I developed a lot of skills throughout my career, and through a lot of frustrations, I think at my last job, I sort of upskilled in like graphic design. I took an online course as well through LinkedIn Learning for graphic design and sort of expanded my skill set that way. And so, yeah, I mean, when I came to sort of fall into this freelancer position, this new career, after, well, in the midst of COVID, really, I did, while I didn't plan that, I did plan how and what services I was going to offer.
Mm.
Um, because being a, the only person in my business, I was conscious of the fact that my time is limited, my resources are limited, also my skill sets are limited. Like, I can't do everything and do it well necessarily. And I don't want to be stressed out of my mind trying to do something that I'm not comfortable with. So, yeah, in terms of services, I offer website design. So I make websites. I do graphic design, so branding and logos specifically. And then I also do social media, but that can include like social media management, uh, meta ads, so like social media ads, as well as like consulting or one-on-one sort of like social media coaching. So they're my main three services, I guess. And yeah, like I planned out my packages, my pricing, how much time I want to put into that package for clients, what's included. So there was a lot of like structure in terms of what I was going to offer, and that's evolved over the years as well.
Yeah. So kind of moving forward into that same question, I'll go back to you, Kayla. What is your business structure like? You mentioned you have, packages. Obviously, you've had to work on pricing, and kind of an additional, more specific question with that, with how your structure is. Do you provide a lot of the services, more than one service? I mean, to a lot of your clients. I imagine that there's businesses that would look to you for social and their website design, for example. So if you could talk a little bit about the way you structure your business, how you manage that, how you package your services.
Yeah, sure. So I think primarily I'm a service-based business. So I'm not an e-commerce. I don't sell products. I sell my time and my skills and an end result sort of like project or something like that. So I structured myself that way. And in terms of who I work with, um, internationally, essentially, so everybody. But a lot of my client base is are in Australia because I started there essentially. But now I'm starting to expand into the European markets and other markets as well, which is exciting. And yeah, you asked about packages and things like that.
Yeah. The way, or just kind of the structure that you take, like within your business, right? The way that you structure the
Yeah.
business. Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess in terms of the services, I generally have a consult with a client first to see what it is that they want. And sometimes that means doing a little bit of digging and sort of like investigating what it is that would be most beneficial for them. Because they might come into it being like, I need a new website. But then after chatting a bit more, it's like, well, actually, you don't need a new website. Maybe you need a do a few things on your social media, or maybe you need a rebrand or something else. So generally, it's working out what it is that they need first, putting together a plan, and that could be project one is work on the branding, and then project two is work on the website, and then yeah, like my social media clients, some of them have monthly retainers, so they have social media ongoing. Other clients just want to learn how to do that stuff themselves. So I'll consult with them on like a once-off basis. So there's lots of different ways that I work with clients and yeah, sort of assist them with their marketing and everything that I can offer for them.
Got it. Yeah. So you would suggest, obviously, after consulting with them and seeing what they need, and surely you have clients that you see one time in your life and others that are kind of there monthly with you. Great. So
Exactly.
Madison, what about you? Because you already talked about the services you offer. What is your business structure like? Is it similar to what Kayla's touched on, or do you approach things differently, like for taking on new clients, for example?
So I think this is beautiful because Kayla and I, like, Kayla is like my ideal. Like, she's so organized. She's got these perfect like packages that she's like put together. It's all very clear. And so one of the things that I like didn't, so Kayla, I didn't know how long you'd worked in corporate, which I think is really cool because like I came from only 1 year, right? And so I went from 1 year in a marketing firm to solo being like, what do I do? So I think it was kind of nice because I'm probably where a lot of people were being like, I have no idea what to do. So I didn't mention before, I'm like, yes, I build websites, but the reason I call myself a consultant is because primarily what happens is people come to me, small business owners specifically. I work with, like, I think the largest business I work with is probably 36 or 40 employees. Everybody else is less, down to like one business owner, right? And so I'll come in, they'll tell me their problems, and I will have a deep conversation with them to try and figure out what's going on, just like Kayla. And some of the time, I find that I'm like, look, I know you want to focus on your marketing, but I see issues like within your team that is like the problem isn't actually the marketing, it's your sales team. And so things along those lines where you have to kind of play a delicate dance. But I love the consulting aspect. So if I can, I really love my clients that I meet with occasionally, give them marching orders, and then they give that to their team, right? I think that that's fantastic, or I might coordinate with their team a little bit. Beyond that, most of what I do, whereas why I say Kayla is my idol because she's got all these perfect packages, most of what I do is I design custom things for every single client. So depending on what they need, I will be like, okay, here's my hourly rate. Should you choose for like if they just are like, and I almost always try to ask their budget, which is a delicate
Hmm.
dance. Like because sometimes people are like, "Why? You want to know how much like money I have so you can take it all?" And I'm like, "No, I want to advise you like how to best spend your money, right?" So once if I can get a plan of like of their budget, then I'll try to design something custom and say, "Look, here's where I would invest your money." And sometimes I'm like, I wouldn't invest your money in this at all. I would go work with your sales team, right? Or do that kind of thing. So yeah, it's much more of a little bit more fluid, I think, on my end. I do have, for example, for social media clients or people who have, yeah, mostly social media or Google Ads, there's an ongoing monthly fee that's just recurring because they know exactly what they're going to get every single time. But yeah, that's kind of how I build it. So but I love I think that if I had to recommend to people the best way to go about it, it would be to go Kayla's way because it is far more linear and predictable. But for me, I really like the flexibility of being able to offer lots of little random stuff sometimes, which is why the custom build can help.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's what you asked.
Yes, yes, that's great. That's awesome. Yeah, and so it sounds too more like Kayla, with you were mentioning like you have packages kind of laid out. I'm sure you've got those so that they have customability or like
Oh, sure.
customization
Yeah.
options, right? Within what you
Yeah.
do. And I think the benefit with that, right, is that you already know what you're offering. And Madison, you mentioned that also, right? Like you have your hourly rate if you just need to sit down and like lend your time and services to them.
Mhm.
But maybe the package route makes it a little less kind of overwhelming when you're sitting down and you don't have to
Yeah.
customize everything from the beginning. But
Yes.
like you said, then you've got the flexibility and the fluidity as well of like really advising each
Mhm.
client.
Mm,
That sounds, yeah, a little uncomfortable to talk about budgets and stuff. And especially if you're giving like criticism, but with the idea of consulting or advising, that can be really hard, especially if it's a
Yeah.
new client, right? Someone you haven't worked with. So let's kind of piggyback into that and talk a little bit about problems that you two incredible ladies have faced as you set up your marketing. Kayla, I don't know if you have any like specific stories or just things that are recurring troubles in this lovely freelance life.
where is this going again? Are my clients going to see this
No,
or?
I don't think so. I've been biting my tongue a little bit. I doubt that they're gonna watch it. More to I doubt they'll watch it.
Okay. Yeah. Oh man, Jeff. I have so many stories. But I mean, I think it comes down to like, okay, so I guess business wise, in terms of challenges, there's this universal challenge that I think every business owner, no matter what you do, faces, which is how do I get sales? How do I get customers? How do I get more leads? How do I get more people buying my service or product? And this really is obviously it depends on your industry, it depends on your marketing, depends on your business structure, everything. But this is like a challenge. I think that is always going to be a challenge, especially for me. I don't know if you feel the same, both of you actually. With Jeff, your similar goals to like expand and obviously have more clients and things. But yeah, trying to find clients and trying to keep clients, and adapt their strategy as well, especially if they're a long-term ongoing client, is probably my number one challenge.
And
And
I
so,
think that's the go ahead.
sorry, I just want to know, like, while she's in this, because I think it'd be a good way for me to follow too. Can you explain how you deal with that? Like, and I know it's a huge question, but
How
like
do you
Yes.
get new
right
clients?
now, yeah, like right now, what are your tactics for trying to maintain that and grow that?
Yeah, so I guess it all starts with the brand, right? So you need to know what you're doing in
Mhm.
terms of like your business.
Mm,
So what are you offering and for who? And that's your core business, your core purpose, what you can actually give people of value, sort of thing. And then I would say the next level is working on your branding. What do you look like? What's your tone of voice? Um, what do people feel when they engage with your brand? Are you a funny brand? Are you posting memes? Or are you a very serious, like luxurious brand? Is that your vibe? So then you have the business, the vibe, or the branding. And then I would say you have your tactics
mm,
or your strategy. So where are you going to say hi to people, connect with people, find your ideal customer or audience, and what channels you choose for that, whether it's social media, whether it's a billboard in your neighborhood, whether it's email marketing, whether it's advertising on Meta or Instagram or Facebook. That will depend on a lot of different things. And generally, it's a larger sort of annual year on year, adaptable, changeable strategy depending on how things are going internally, you know?
Mhm. So, Madison, for you as well, what have been your problems? I'm sure you can share with the three of us. I would say with freelance, the flexibility is the best part about it, but
mm.
that flexibility comes with, right, the constant maintaining of it. You don't just
Oh
wake
yeah.
up and show up to work, right? You have to maintain it. You have to think about what I'm doing now, what I'm doing travel wise, what I need to do business wise to get where I want to be travel wise. So for me, it's always that, again, delicate dance of I love my flexibility and being able to say I can't give classes this week. But it also comes with kind of that double-edged sword of I don't want to be too available. You want to make sure you have enough clientele and enough business that'll carry you through. So what are your tactics for keeping that going and growing? And if you have any additional problems that you face typically in this freelance life?
Yeah. So, I mean, I am blessedly at a point in my business where I'm actually not looking for new clients. This business, my yoga business, I am desperately going to try to find like so many people to come to my retreats. But my marketing business, I've had a couple clients with me who have been there for like one client's been there like almost all 8 years. And he was my like OG client that carried me through a lot of rough times, right? That one person that was just like
Mm.
awesome because I was able to show the work that I was doing for him. And so I grew my business almost exclusively via word of mouth, like almost entirely. I think I posted about it on Facebook twice. So it's a different avenue. And it was literally like, working for people and being like, hey, if you enjoyed what I did, can you spread the word? Do you know anyone else who might need this? And people slowly would just be coming to me, and it was bizarre, right? And so now I'm blessedly at that point where I am working with people that I love. And I'm not looking for any new clients because I don't want to work any more on marketing than I than I am now. But the challenge, however, like especially in this lead up to this, was how do I protect my own time? That's the first challenge. How do I shut my phone off when I've got a client messaging me at 8 p.m., 9 p.m., 10 p.m., and I was bad at it. Like I was bad at it for years. And my husband would be like, we are eating dinner. Can you not? And I am such a neurotic perfectionist that I'd be like, I have to fix this. It's just one thing. It's just one thing on a website. Like I gotta, and it was really, really challenging. And I think only in the last couple years have I come into a space where I'm like, it's okay. They can wait until I respond in the morning. Do you know what I mean? Like we guarding this space for us, I think, is so important. And taking time for yourself off where you're like, I'm really not talking to any clients, which I've done for the first time like this year, once, and last year like once. But most of the time, because I travel so much, I work and travel, right? Because I don't want my clients to think that their work is going to be neglected or lose anything when I'm traveling around the world. Like I might be somewhere new every single day, but you're still going to have all your stuff done before you expect to have it done, right? So the first problem is finding that balance. And I think the second problem that it took me a while to find was finding people I like. And no, I mean it. Like finding clients that resonate with who I am. And we're all human, right? And some people have different working styles and hold different expectations. So finding clients who were cool with me being me. Like, I swear, I travel a lot. I won't be reliable at all the times that you need. I also, if you tell me something needs to be done tomorrow, I'm not that type of person. Like, I could do it tomorrow, but that's rude to set deadlines like that. So finding the people that really like lift you up and make it fun to do your job, right? And I think that comes with time, because no matter what, in the beginning of your business, you start and you work with someone and you're like, "Oh God, what have I done?" Like, "Oh no, this is gonna be bad." And you might make it through the whole working relationship, and then you learn a lesson. You're like, "Oh, I will never do that again." So you kind of have to learn these things and also be willing to like terminate contracts with clients if it's not working out and say like, "Hey, it's not me, it's not you. This just doesn't work for either of us, and I can refer you to someone else." So those are probably the biggest challenges that I encountered. And they're ongoing, right? Just like Kayla said, like finding new clients, this is also an ongoing thing of how can I continue to work with great people and protect my time. Because yeah, that's the thing about working from home and being your own boss is you also are your own boss. So, which can be problematic. But yeah.
Yeah, and the work-life balance, just because we're working as freelancers or maybe people that have a more structured, rooted life look at us and think, oh, like they're just flying by the seat of their pants.
Yeah.
It's like you have to protect your free time as well. You can't just say, well, I'm on a time difference, so that means that I'm going to sacrifice dinner time or like intimate, life things that you're doing in Spain because someone from Minnesota or someone who's, 5 hours earlier than you is expecting something.
Yeah.
That's been an issue for me as well, especially because I
Mhm.
don't have my business to the point where I'm not taking new clients. So you get into this kind of um, you start taking everything, right? Because you want to grow. But I think it's a really important piece of advice, what Madison says about being able to terminate that contract and hopefully, growing to the point where you're able to do that and it's not going to affect your business negatively.
Yeah.
Like at my point right now with classes, like if someone wants Spanish classes, like I will do it, right?
Mhm.
Regardless of the time difference. I had a student who was living in Melbourne at one point. And so we're
Wow.
talking 13-hour time difference. And it's like, I will do this. Like, I don't care. I will be doing classes from 7 a.m. until 8 p.m. or 7 a.m. until 8 a.m. so that they can take their class at 7 p.m. But you get to that point where it's like, maybe I should market more to people who are on Eastern Standard Time, which is
Mhm.
either the same as Chilean time or 1 hour difference. And obviously, it's going to be, as you said, it's going to work for both of us,
Yeah.
right? Instead of this, like, oh, Jeff, I have to change my class. Can you do, earlier? And I'm like, okay, can I do a class from 5 to 6 a.m.? And exactly what Madison said, I can have it done for tomorrow, but am I willing, right, to wake up at 4:30 and get into Spanish mode and teach someone a language at 5 a.m.? Like, maybe that client isn't compatible with me, right?
Yeah.
And it depends a lot on your schedule, your time, what you want, and then also, what the client's looking for, right? Because that student in particular from Melbourne was really dedicated, and so he was always in class, right? And I didn't have to worry about switching back and forth. But some of my East Coast clients, yes, would, for example, last minute or 2 hours before class, hey, can you do it an hour earlier, an hour later, something
Yeah.
like that. So, great. So, sorry, go ahead, Kayla.
I was just going to say, actually, on this point of like work-life balance and kind of like making sure that you're working in a capacity that works for your lifestyle and what you kind of want and need from work. I actually I price based on value, not based on hours.
Mm.
So when it comes to like my packages, um, I factor in, okay, how many hours do I want to work in a month? And of those hours, how much do I want to earn or how much do I need to earn to make a living? And then I sort of figure out like, okay, how much do I have in expenses? How much do I have to pay in tax? And price my, if you're buying a website, you're not buying, 50 hours of work. You're buying the value of this website and what it can provide for you, which allows me to be able to, have Fridays off, or, go for coffee after Pilates in the morning, and have that flexibility a little bit more. So I would, if you're going to start your business, I would consider like not necessarily charging for how many hours it takes you to produce that service or product, but for the value.
Yeah, that's such an important point. Um, because so I also I think there are people out there who are different, but I am a hard worker. Like I am when I am working like a psycho. Like if it's an hour of work, you are guaranteed that I'm sitting there working so hard, being neurotic, like chugging coffee. And so for me, if I work more than 4 hours a day, and this might sound like, "Bleh," but if I work more than 4 hours a day, I'm exhausted because I am working at like 10 times the speed of maybe I would if I had a 40-hour-a-week job and I was like watching the clock tick by and I'm like, I just want this to be over, right? Because I'm driven by results. I'm driven by having things being completed. So that's and in what Kayla says, that's why it is important if you can, because sometimes clients will
Mm,
want hourly rate and you're like, okay, great. My hourly rate then is high, right?
Right.
Because
yeah.
if you work fast, your rate is high. And then you can do it that way. But having these packages, it's awesome because when you bust it out and you work super hard and you deliver things to a client early and they're ecstatic and they're really happy with the product, it doesn't matter how long it took you, right? And I
Yeah.
think having that shift is so important because then you don't need to work like 40 hours a week and you're not like, did I work my 40 hours a week? And you might have weeks where you work a ton and then other weeks where you're like, oh, I got all my stuff done. And I think that's the beauty of being back in this freelancing space kind of is just knowing that you have that flexibility. Um and the discipline that it takes to also like you have to be self-disciplined, right? To be able to be like, okay, well, I might work 7 hours one day and maybe 2 hours the other day. But being results driven too, I think is important. So
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I think that's one of the best parts about being your own boss, and really what makes you kind of look back and reflect on more of a corporate life or like, a company lifestyle or work culture in a company is that we are like counting time, right? Because it's all
yeah.
about like the time you're putting in. But as Kayla has mentioned, value is super important as well, right? Um, and I just honestly, I think that when you're driven by results and you want to get the work done well and efficiently, it works so much better when you're doing it for yourself rather
Yes.
than like a paper pushing for someone else because you are counting the clock, as Madison used that example. Like, I think that's how anyone who has to sit down for 8 full hours and work feels. And in Chile, for example, we just recently passed legislation about lowering the minimum wage to 40 or the minimum wage, sorry, the work week, right? Full-time work to 40 hours a week because they were doing 45-hour full-time work contracts. And it's just like, this is incompatible with human biology and
Yeah.
just like the way we are. And really reflecting back on what you said in the beginning, Madison, about just like staring out at a sunny, beautiful day, right? From this window, it's like, I need the flexibility to be able to work from 10 p.m. until 2 a.m. if I want, because the day was just too beautiful to miss. And I would rather sit down at my computer when it's dark outside and I have no interest in being in nature, right?
Yeah.
So that whole results driven thing, I think, is one of the best parts about being freelance is that you're not going to sit around and just like twiddle your thumbs or like waste time because it's like the quicker I get this done, the happier my clients are going to be.
Yeah.
I'll be free. I'll have money, right? I'll be paid. And I get to go kayaking today because I already finished my work. So
Yes.
you end
That's
up,
true.
like you say, working more efficiently when it's for yourself because you're driven by those results. So I think the value of freelance work is often underestimated by
Mm.
people that don't quite understand like the structure that we're working with compared to um, something that's more of an hourly rate or a 40-hour a week contract.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah. So to kind of wrap up on the business side, because I think we have a lot to talk about in terms of what it's like living out of your home country, what it's like, the word expat is here, but I would say what it's like being an immigrant, right?
Yeah.
'Cause we're the good immigrants, right? We're the white and educated and working immigrants, but we're still immigrants.
Mhm.
And I think living out of the country more so rather than just being a freelancer, right? Because a freelancer in Perth working with a Perth clientele has a way different experience, right, than what Kayla has with living in Spain, but working with a lot of Perth-based businesses or Australian businesses. So to wrap up the part about our freelance and our work and get a little more into the international aspect, what it's like living in a different country that speaks a different language as well. What would be some of the main successes that you two ladies could share with these aspiring freelancers that are hopefully watching and listening about your path? You know, what is one of your biggest or best successes? I've heard Madison share a couple of those on social media, but maybe if you could take a second to think about like what is this like gold star moment in your career? And Madison, if we could start with you on that once you're ready, you
I
know,
was
something
watching
to
Kayla.
share.
I was
Yeah.
watching Kayla think, and I was like, I'm gonna have to go first.
Yeah, yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Thanks.
So I think that like for me, I don't know if it's like a like moment, right? But I've gotten my business to the point where I can pursue my passion because to be very frank, marketing is not my passion. It's my job and I'm very good at it and I enjoy it. But it's not what like keeps me up at night where I lay in bed and I'm like so excited. And so I am at a point where my business allows me the time that I need to pursue yoga retreats, leading yoga retreats, teaching yoga, traveling, the things that really like fill my cup. And I think when you get to that point of balance, it's a beautiful thing, right? You're like, oh my God, I I've found this way to provide for myself, to provide a nice life, to enjoy what I do and still do all that crazy shit that I love, right? And which it hasn't been there for a long time. It took a long time to get there. It went I was doing too much of the stuff I love and not enough work for a long time. And then I was doing the other way. So yeah, now I would say finding that balance is probably my greatest joy at this moment.
I think that's a universal human success, right? We
Yeah.
all look to feel fulfilled and feel like we're doing, you know, just enough in terms of work and what we enjoy doing, but then also having time to pursue passions. I love
Yeah,
that. Thank you
exactly.
for sharing that
Mm.
success. I'm so happy for you. I congratulate you for having gotten there because I think that's what most people would aspire to, even if they don't know it yet. That's
Yeah.
what we want, right? We want that work-life balance. So what about you, Kayla? What would you say is one of your biggest successes?
Well, in a similar vein, actually, to do with this like balance, actually in 2022, I took a little bit of a risk because I was traveling. I could finally leave Australia after COVID, and I think it was 2022 that I could finally leave. So I was traveling around Europe. I was living my best life, working here, working there, Airbnb expert. But I decided to take a bit of a risk and hike from basically the bottom of Germany all the way to Spain while working with my laptop. I mean, in kilometers, it's like 1,000, it was like 1,200 kilometers. I don't know what that is in miles.
It's okay.
I guess
We
you
all
guys
live in
would know.
kilometer
It's a
countries.
lot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're
It's okay.
kilometers
Okay.
It's a
now.
lot.
It's
For
okay.
Great.
anyone watching, that's a
Yeah,
lot.
Yeah,
it was a
everybody
lot.
else
It
can
was a lot. But so it was basically like 2.5 months of walking every day, about 20 Ks a day, and also working in the evening. So I would walk, I would leave at like 9 a.m. I'd get to my Airbnb or campsite or where else, sometimes no campsite at like 4, sometimes later, and then shower, eat, do some yoga, and then work until, sometimes 10, 11 p.m. And it happened to be the busiest time in my business as well. So I was like, this is great. So I sort of got the help of my husband because I was like, you're not doing anything. Please help me. You have a laptop. um, and yeah, so I did that for 2.5 months, working, and had one of the biggest growth, well, I guess income revenue periods in that year, for sure. And it was such an achievement for me because it was like, wow, I can be anywhere and work essentially. I can be at a random hotel and have a client call at 7 a.m. and then start walking at 9 a.m., answer emails on my phone, and then, do other work in the evening. So I'd say that was probably my biggest work accomplishment. And it really highlighted like how far you can take flexibility with when you run your own business,
You were such
Absolutely.
a
So
badass.
you are a badass.
Crazy.
That's
So
Never
cool.
again.
So for anyone watching, I would just like to the takeaway that I get from this amazing success that Kayla just shared with us is that you can have it all, like absolutely. Because I think anyone watching would say it is already a success just to have been able to take those 2 months and do that walking route and just keep your business, steady and not grow it. But you're talking about not only did you have this like amazing, right, like life goal and passion of walking and hiking and seeing all of these European countries, right? Um, at the same time as having business growth. I mean, that's a huge success, right? You can literally have it all. You can grow your business while you're walking from Germany to Spain.
Yeah.
Repeat for everyone
Yeah.
watching. She walked from Germany to Spain. That's amazing. Thank you for
I
sharing
wouldn't
that.
recommend it for anyone.
I've never been,
I wouldn't
right?
recommend it. No, no. But I mean, like heaps of people come to Spain to do the Camino.
Yeah.
So I mean, like this is what like running your own business really can give you if you make it happen for yourself as well. And obviously, it's opportunity and privilege, and also like a good plan in place. But it's not necessarily easy
Mm.
as such
Yeah.
to achieve that.
I'm sure you had to plan that, think about it for a long time before you did it, and you were probably nervous about executing it. But now you're here on the podcast talking about your expat life and how successful that one was. That's awesome. All right, ladies. So I'm gonna, I think, transition over and let Madison take it about living as an immigrant in a foreign country. Is there any last minute things that you'd like to share about maybe how you're moving forward or trying to grow your business? Anything you want to share about that before we move on? No? Good.
Don't think so.
I
I'm
will
good.
just move us into immigrant life because I feel like it also kind of concludes, I don't know, concludes, but also kind of plays off of what Kayla just said too. So one of the things that when we talk about like, okay, I want to start my business, I want to live abroad, right? And it seems like this massive leap because it is. It's huge. And this idea of like, okay, well, how can I do it? And there are so many different ways, but it's important to mention that like when I first started backpacking and working abroad, I did a work trade program called Workaway. It's workaway.org in case anyone wants to look it up. And essentially, I did work exchange. So I worked 20 hours a week for random businesses like their front desk. Maybe I worked at a surf camp where I taught yoga and cooked, and they fed me and housed me. I lived in a tent, but like housing nonetheless. Housed me while I traveled and grew my business, right? So I would work for the 20 hours a week. I had food and lodging covered. And then I would do my own work in the evenings trying to build up my business. So there are these ways, right, to kind of make space for growing your business even when finances are tight. And I would say that the biggest challenge, especially encountered that I've encountered living and working abroad, was in these early days of being like, okay, I don't speak the language very well. I don't know exactly how I'm going to eat and live somewhere. So like how can I make this happen all while growing my business? And for me, like that's why I suggest the workaway, because it's possible that way. I don't necessarily, I think that there are a lot of different ways to do it. But that was the way that I solved that problem. Um, but I don't know. I mean, that's my only way that I'm like, I did it that way. I don't know what other ways work though. So maybe you guys can shed some insight on how like that move went for you. Jeff, do you want to start on?
Yeah. Yeah, so for my move, like I had already mentioned kind of at the beginning of this podcast that I knew like what I wanted.
Mm,
Madison and I met actually, well, we officially would have met at the orientation for our study abroad program
yeah,
in a classroom at the University of Minnesota, Twin Cities. So this would have been Minneapolis, circa 2013.
yeah, 10 years ago, right?
Um, yeah, over. Yeah, it'll be 11 years, I think.
Crazy.
Yeah. It's Buenos Aires. So we, kind of met in Buenos Aires and I just like hit the ground running in Buenos Aires. I had prepared for it, saved for it, studied for it. I made my whole university year before studying abroad.
Mhm.
For more context, we did just like a summer program. So we did like a 2 month program over the summer. So we didn't actually go and miss, university semester. But we knew, of course, both Madison and I, had signed up for the program. We knew the year before we would go. So
Yeah,
we had a year. In my case, it was my junior year. I don't know if we were in the same
I have no
same
idea.
generation.
No
Yeah,
clue.
but otherwise we would have gone to school, right? And then in the summer months went to Buenos Aires. So I had prepared for this. I was already studying Spanish. My degree, I got a double major. I have a BA in sociology with mention in social justice, and then I have a BA in what the University of Minnesota calls Hispanic culture, linguistics, and literature. So basically a Spanish major. So I did a double major with that. So I knew what I was going to Buenos Aires for, and it was fluency. I was no questions asked, like I'm in Buenos Aires to speak Spanish all day. And that made me really branch out because I had great friends like Laura and Madison who were willing to go clubbing and meet locals and speak Spanish on the street and just be an
Yes.
Argentine. But we had a lot of people in the group who would just, meet up after class and
Yeah.
go to a bar and speak American English all afternoon. And I'm like, I can't afford to do that, right? So for me, like I had this goal. Like I knew I wanted to live outside of the US and I knew I wanted to live in Latin America from the time I went to Buenos Aires forward. So for
Do you mind
me, I
me,
never
sorry, Jeff, do you mind me asking if you're okay with sharing like how much money you saved up in advance? Like how much money you had?
for moving or
Yeah. Well,
I moved.
when you move, but also for this trip, like you had saved up money, right? Because you were going to spend some time there to really figure it out. So when you first made that leap, how much money did you have?
Oh yeah, when I first made the leap, like to move to Chile and
Yeah.
everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had maybe $3,000
Okay.
and three suitcases. I moved because I was like, I'm moving to hemispheres, right? So like I wouldn't typically go like bogged down, but I'm like, I'm moving my life. So I paid for an additional 23 kilo, 50 pound piece of luggage, and I moved my life from Minneapolis to Chile in 2010, right after graduating. So like June
Oh.
2010, and I would have graduated in May. So $3,000 only. But that's where I wanted to speak about, with my experience, I had a visa already upon
Mm,
entering Chile. I had applied for this, I had planned it out, and I had, friends and a support system in the country before I arrived. So $3,000 was very little money. I mean, this was 10 years ago, so it was a little more. But I really just like took the clothes on my back and a little bit of money and moved because I obviously started looking for work immediately. So I didn't have this like transition period, which I think can be really beneficial, where you can like live off of savings for a while. And it
mm.
depends heavily on if you know people or not in the country you're trying to migrate to. Because
And
if you have those connections,
how long after this, after Buenos Aires was this? Like how long after?
this was the year after. So
Just 1
Madison and
year.
I, yeah, 2013. And then I did my senior year. So I had one more year of university. And then by July 1st, 2014, I was in Chile, living. And I didn't know that I was gonna like become a Chilean citizen, right? Like you get there and Madison has already shared about how like the in-betweens, living in Costa Rica for a while, like Cayman Islands, like deciding Spain finally feels like home. There's no right or wrong way. I was very open to Chile not working.
Mm,
But I wanted to get there and set myself up for visa, a right to work in the country, having a national ID number, things like that. So my experience was very like, I know where I'm going, I know what I'm doing, and my goal is to graduate university, leave the United States, and become fluent in Spanish. And I chose to do that in Chile because I knew friends that I had met in Buenos Aires. Who lived in Chile, right? So they were also
mm,
studying there. So I had this like connection to
mm,
to move to Chile, which I think a lot of people that are going to be expats are going to be, immigrants out of choice, not out of necessity, right? I think a lot of people would want to maybe move around a bit more, travel around, have a little more fluid experience with it. I had a support system which kind of drew me to Chile.
mm. And so when you made that move, and actually, let's say now, like one of the biggest challenges you've encountered living and working, what's the hardest part in the last since you've,
Yeah,
settled?
for me, it's being away from family. Like my
Mm,
business isn't to the point where I can just travel when I decide and want to because of money.
mm,
I live in South America,
mm,
so salaries are 1,000 US dollars or less per month, and I live and work as a local there. I've just now started doing more online work and freelance and marketing to people in the northern hemisphere. But it's the main difficulty is just the distance, like not being able to say I'm going to spend $1,500 to go just because I want to hug my mom, right? Having to decide like you come this year because I don't have the money to go this year. That's the
yep.
hardest. That's the biggest challenge for me is the physical distance. I live 9,900 kilometers from my home. And I know Kayla can feel that too because it's hard to get back to Perth, right? Like it's far. No matter where you're coming from, unless it's like Timor-Leste, it's going to take a long time. Like, so that's the biggest
Yeah.
challenge for me, the
Yeah.
distance from the people I love.
I think that echoes with all of us,
Mm.
that's. you have to be
Minnesota's not
willing
close
to,
either.
yeah, you have to be willing to give that up, right? And so making that choice is, I feel like, heart-wrenching every time. Like every time I'm like, oh, I wish I could, like this summer, I wish I could go home. But also I'm like, oh my God, flights are like so expensive. There's no way that I could go home. Because even if our businesses are doing well, unfortunately, my business isn't doing so well that I can be like, I'm just gonna fly wherever I want, whenever I want, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, Kayla, what do you think in terms of like your biggest challenge working and living abroad?
I think it was really, to be honest, I had a really hard like 3 months when I moved. So 2022 obviously did that hike, but then that whole trip, I spent the whole year basically trying to find a country in Europe and a city that I really connected with, and somewhere that felt like I could build a community, I could work here, I could live my life here. So I really, it wasn't just like travel for me, like, oh, this is a nice place, but it was like, could I live here?
Hmm.
And set up my life, my business, everything in this country. So I went back to Australia at end of 2022, and then it wasn't until the digital nomad visa in Spain was announced that I was like, oh my gosh, there's this new visa that would allow me to be a digital nomad and work from and live in Spain. So I took that up in January, and oh man, the first 3 months were really hard with setting up that visa. We used a lawyer for that, and whenever you move your whole life, maybe Jeff, you feel the same in Madison too, but like it costs a lot.
Yes.
You don't take all the pots and pans that you had at your last rental in Australia or in the US. Like you have to buy everything again, you have to start everything again, or find ways to start your life again. And that includes also all of the admin of, I need to learn this healthcare system, I need to learn this government system, this taxation system, which is, you know, the Spanish taxation system is completely different to the Australian one. So that was a learning curve for me. Plus, I don't speak the language. Not enough to, go to the doctors if I'm unwell and say, hey, I'm sick with this in this specific area. So it was really challenging. Yeah, I'd say for the first 3 to 6 months, just setting up. And for me, like Jeff, I also had some friends here already in Girona from when I traveled here before. And that was really what made me feel like, oh, I could start to build a friendship network, because I think that's super important to have people around you, especially when you don't have your family or your friends from back home with you. So I'd say, like, yeah, challenge would be building that network, not just professionally, but also on a personal level, to sort of build your community and feel like you're supported as well.
Yeah. And kind of like what Jeff said. Yeah, go ahead, Jeff. You can.
No, just to add on to that, because yeah, so when I moved, like I said, I had this kind of like support system already and a reason to go to Chile. But I hadn't mentioned, so I moved originally to a place called Temuco, which is in southern Chile. And then after that, after having worked and got like, a CV filled out, having some resume exposure, like working in the country, I made a blind move to Valparaiso, which is, like 1,000 kilometers from where I moved in Chile. And I didn't know anyone. And for that move, I literally went with $1,000, 2 suitcases now, and just a room I had, on the equivalent of Craigslist, just like whatever, a classifieds ads, right? In Valparaiso. So I did kind of both in that sense. Like I did this idea of like moving to where you have a support network, but I also within the country decided that I didn't want to live in that specific area, both because of climate, politics, the city, the geography where it was located. I wanted to be near the ocean, and in a city that vibed more with me. So I did kind of both, right? I got into Chile, found out I love this place. This is absolutely where I want to live my life. It's geographically one of the most spectacular countries in the world. And they speak Spanish, which is what I was looking for. So I did feel after getting settled, and talking about, what Kayla's talking about with learning the taxation, learning healthcare, the bureaucracy, getting the language to a level where you can explain something to someone and understand what they're saying back to you. After having that, I did do this like blind move to where I just decided like, this is where I want to live. The idea of just like, I'm going to go live in San Francisco. I don't know anyone in San Francisco, but I'm here for the vibe, for the culture, for the
Mm.
nature. That's what I did. And that was 8 years ago. So I did 2 years in this like area that I had a community in, and then 8 years now in Valparaiso, which I also obviously have a lovely community in.
Mm,
So I just wanted to add that on to what Kayla had mentioned, and because it sounds like you did a little bit more of the searching for a place, but obviously
yeah.
if you have friends in Girona, that helps. But it doesn't mean that you can't have a successful, move to a place where you don't have a network yet, right?
Yeah, I mean, I moved
Absolutely.
here. Well, actually, I came here for a dinner reservation and just like never left. And I didn't know anyone in the whole town and like had no, and I had $400. So like, like there's a way I made enough money to put a deposit on a 500 euro apartment. Hilarious. Anyway, like you're saying, Jeff, like if you feel called to like stay somewhere, don't shy away. But I echo with Kayla, like in the beginning, not having that system and being like, okay, I got to go out and meet people. I got to like find a way to make friends. It's really hard and it can be challenging and super isolating. So if you are the type of person that you're like, I hate doing that, it helps to like build that support system first and then go. And so based on what you guys are talking about, you're both paying taxes in the country that you live in, correct?
Yes.
Jeff, you too?
Yes, yes. So
Yeah.
I work because I have my freelance, but I make little enough on my freelance that I don't have to report it to the United States. So
Okay.
I only pay Chilean taxes. But of course, hopefully, I get to grow my business enough to where the U.S. will want taxation. But yes, I pay taxes locally in Chile.
Okay. So, because people, this is one of the things people are always worried about. And actually, I got a few messages about this, like how do taxes work? And it's such a big thing where it's like it depends. It's such a big it depends, right? And so for me, I still pay taxes in the U.S. My business is based in the U.S. Most of my clients are in the U.S.
Mhm.
And so up until like a certain amount, it makes sense for the time being for me to pay taxes there. However, when my visa changes, things can change, right? And so like you have to I think the main takeaway point when people are like, what am I going to do with taxes or what about the visa? Just keep in mind that it's a huge pain in the ass. It is hard,
Yeah.
it is expensive, it is frustrating, especially when it's not in your language. Like I speak Spanish, but I don't speak visa Spanish. I'm reading all these things. I'm like, I have no idea.
Cool.
We also hired a lawyer to help, which can kind of ease some of the pain, but then that's more money, right? So it's kind
Yeah.
of like, where do you put your time, effort, and energy? And that being said, like, don't let it scare you. Like, if it's something that you really want and you feel like it's within your reach, don't let the visa or the taxes scare you because you'll figure it out. Like where there's a will, there's a way, right? But yeah, it's I know the tax system here. I looked into it for Marty, my husband, because he's going to be paying taxes here, and oh my gosh, it's a roller coaster every time. So that's how taxes work for all the people who ask me. It's a mess. You'll figure it out.
I
Yeah,
Yeah, go
a
ahead,
quick
Jeff.
go, Jeff.
question about that. So will you pay taxes in both countries? Because like
No.
I know how it works in Chile, for example, but will you have to
Yeah.
pay in both countries for people that are
No.
worried about this?
No, that's a great question. So up until 100, if you make over $100,000 and you are paying taxes in, for example, if you're here in Spain and you make over 100K, then the US will want to cut. But if you're making under 100,000, which is a great reason to be like, I don't need to make more than $100,000 to live a good life. Because one of the things we haven't discussed is also like bringing money from a different country into the country you live, depending on the conversion rate or how the society is, can be a huge benefit, right? Like I don't have to work 40 hours a week because I'm not living in the US. If I lived in the US, I would be working 80 hours a week and I'd be living in an apartment over a parking lot at a grocery store at best, like maybe a studio. Like, so it's one of these things that there are advantages to living and working somewhere different. But yeah, paying the taxes, as long as you don't make up to 100K, which in my opinion, you don't need to make over 100K if
Right.
you're like if you're not living in the
I mean,
US.
that would be nice.
Yeah, sure, be nice.
I wouldn't
Like,
complain.
no, but I mean, I think that yeah, anyway, all that to say, like depending where you are, the US won't take your money unless you're making good money.
Mhm. Yeah.
That's
And
it.
for Australia, Kayla, is that similar? Do you pay with your digital nomad? You obviously pay taxes in Spain. Do you also have to pay Australian tax, or how does that work for you?
This feels so raw because I've literally just transferred over to the Spanish tax system. So I could tell you all about it. It's so
With
fun.
details.
So for some countries, depending on where your citizenship lies, so my citizenship lies in Australia. I'm an Australian citizen. There can be tax treaties, which I
Mm.
think, in my simple terms, which could totally be wrong, but it's basically like the tax system in Australia, if they had a treaty with Spain, would speak to the tax system in Spain, and they are in cahoots. But this does not exist. Yay. So, I think if you're from the UK, there's like something called an A1 form that you can lodge with the British tax system, whatever they call it. Which, yeah, if they're living in Spain, then there's something that works out there where there's a waiver and you don't have to pay
Like,
tax somewhere, and it's mysterious to me. But that's not my case. So what I found in this process is so you have up until 6 months living in a country where you don't have to pay tax. So you can just be a tourist, pay tax back to your home country or your citizenship country, and it's totally fine. But once you reach that 6 months, you're not really a tourist anymore. You're kind of living there. So you sort of have to pay tax to the country where you were living. And
mhm.
for me, I have a visa for 3 years here, and it's a digital nomad, so a working visa. So I had to, in that process, basically prove that I have the funds and income, etc., to meet the requirements of living and paying the taxes here. So, as a sole trader, there's a few costs. I am an autonoma, so a self-employed person in Spain, and that is a little bit annoying. So you pay income tax, obviously, but you have to pay someone to do your taxes, but kind of deal with the bureaucracy. I don't know if it's the same in Chile. Um, but yeah, this is something which is very different from the Australian tax system. You have to basically pay for someone on your behalf to do your taxes, deal with the bureaucracy. Whereas in Australia, you could pretty much like DIY it or upskill with the information that's online without major consequences.
Yeah. I think it's important to note too, the only reason that I'm not doing what Kayla's doing is because I'm on a different visa. And
Yes.
and
Yeah.
so this is the thing. Like this is why I say like look into your visa, look into the tax implications once you're applying, or you can just float the system and move around every couple months and never settle down, and then you just keep paying taxes in your home country. Easy peasy if you are cool with not having a home, which you might be. Maybe you're like, yeah, sounds great. It's a good way to live. So with that, I feel like we figured out taxes suck, and you'll figure it out.
You
It's
have to
But
hard.
pay them
let's
to somebody.
I touched briefly on, so I think one of the biggest benefits for me for living and working abroad, bringing money from the US to Spain, is obviously the cost of living in Spain is much, much lower. I pay much less for groceries, my apartment, it is super beneficial. And this is like kind of the obvious like benefit of living and working abroad. But and we'll start with Jeff. Like what would you say one of your biggest benefits of living and working abroad is? Um
Yeah. Yeah, so just kind of piggybacking off what you say, in my case, even more so. I live in a third world country still, right? Considered by the countries that decide who is a third world country.
yeah.
But you have the huge benefit of if I'm making money in dollars, I can work 10 hours a week, and it's going to be the equivalent to like 30 hours a week of work in the local currency. So even as Madison mentions, in Europe, this is even still the case. Maybe
Mhm.
it won't be the case if you're going to move to Iceland or Norway, but
Yeah.
almost anywhere you're
Sure.
going to go, like groceries and rent and like even utilities are going to be a lot cheaper than the US. So huge benefit of like making money in dollars. So I've been living 10 years in Chile. I'm at the end of my visa process. I'm waiting for nationality now, so I will be a dual citizen. And the whole time I've been working specifically in Chile, right? And so since wages in the Chilean economy are so inferior to a typical US wage, right? I haven't had to pay my taxes frequently here unless I'm doing work within the US. So I've been doing everything like in Chile, right? And it's extremely beneficial to work with dollars, which is why I launched this idea of like, hey, I'm a great language professor. I love Spanish. I've got tons of knowledge about it. Why don't I charge people in dollars? And then I can work a little less. So I feel like living abroad has allowed me to restructure my life and think about working less and like working what I need and what I need to feel good and thrive. I'm not like paycheck to paycheck with this, but like, what do I really need out of
Mhm.
life? And I start to find that a lot of these things like don't cost money. And so you can restructure that and decide like if I make X amount of money in dollars, but I'm living on Chilean pesos, I could maybe be comfortable with just 16 hours a week of work and
Yeah.
not need to strive for the 32 hours that I would need to live in a country where it's more expensive. The other thing for me is language. I think that my goal, the thing that has like moved this for me is that I love Espanol. Like I'm so obsessed with language. That's why I want to continue learning more languages. I speak English, Spanish, and Portuguese, and I want to learn more languages as well. And I love teaching languages. So like for me, just being able to wake up every day and like use Spanish more than English in my daily life is a huge benefit of living abroad.
Mm.
That's specific to a country that doesn't speak your home language. Of course, if you're going to go move to Australia from the US, which is a beautiful move, many people should do this. You're going to have different challenges, and different benefits of living in Australia. But you're not going to get language necessarily, right? You're
No.
going to learn new language just from living
No.
there. So for me, huge benefit. You'll learn new words for sure.
Yeah.
But no new language, right? And that for me is like number one. Like I would never consider living in Australia or New Zealand long term or the UK long term because for me it's like if I am doing this horribly difficult in the beginning dance of like working through bureaucracy, finding out social cues, having just a horrible day where you feel like no one can understand you. If I'm going to do that, like I'm going to become a new speaker of a new language out of it. That for me is the number one goal and benefit of living abroad, is the ability to immerse and learn a language.
Yeah, that's
Mm.
fantastic. Such a great answer and so true. Yeah. You want to learn fast? That's the way to do it, right?
It's the same reason I haven't considered moving to Spain because I
Yeah.
speak
You're
completely
like, well, I
fluent
can't
Spanish.
learn there.
But I would go to Portugal, you know what I mean? Like I'll go to
Yeah,
Portugal and better my Portuguese because I speak it fluently, but I don't practice it as often as Spanish.
sure.
And I'm sure I would love living in Spain, but I'm just like, sorry, Spain. Like it's either France or Portugal for me because
Portugal's gorgeous too. Like
yeah,
Portugal's fantastic.
exactly. Yeah, I'm like everywhere.
Yeah. All right. And Kayla, so what would your one of your biggest benefits, you think?
Yeah, I mean, I echo Jeff's sentiments, like being immersed in a different culture that's, totally different to what you're used to and what you've been brought up in is super fun, super challenging. So if you're not ready for that challenge, maybe consider, moving somewhere with similar language. If language isn't, you don't want to immerse yourself in a certain language. But that said, like Girona as well, even though it's Spanish and Catalan here as the main languages, and a little bit of French, it's not really like there's a huge expat community. So it's not like I'm practicing Spanish every day or practicing Catalan every day. So I think, yeah, you can still find, a place that suits kind of what you need, especially if there's other aspects in your life that you have to consider, like if you have kids, if you have elderly parents, you might want to be closer to them. You might want to have, be somewhere that has room for guests to come visit you, or be more affordable as well for your general life, like you, Jeff, as well, and Madison. But actually, I find Girona still quite expensive compared to Australia, so can't echo that sentiment. But yeah, I think just being immersed in something completely different is a type of like personal challenge that I'm really grateful for, and I think if you're willing and open to that experience, I think it's awesome. It's such a cool thing.
Yeah. So beautiful and so true. Like once
Hmm.
you experience it too, I don't know. It's fun to watch how quickly your life can change, right? And how quickly you can change as a person. Because I think there's no catalyst for growth like travel and like leaving. There is if you wanna travel and you want to grow, you are going to be blown away by the things that you encounter and the lessons that you're taught, right? So to end this up, we've been talking, I don't know how long because you guys are fantastic and I love it and it doesn't matter. I'm going to wrap up with one piece of life advice you would like to share with people, followed by a little shameless self promotion. So, first, let's do the piece of life advice, and then we're just going to all throw our sales pitch out there, and hopefully people didn't stop listening at this point already because it was too long. So my piece of life advice for everyone is to find new ways to make yourself uncomfortable every single day. I think that beauty lives in the discomfort. And if you are scaring yourself, if you're feeling like you're not sure, if you're worried, that's a good thing because that's where we grow, change, and learn. So yeah, that would be my little life tip. I will go next. We want Kayla. Kayla, why didn't you tell us your little life tip?
Okay, so life tip slash maybe business tip.
Even very good. Yes.
Can be applied to anything. I think it's super important to be adaptable in whatever you're doing. So adaptability is really like another word for evolution, right? You're changing, you're going with whatever life throws at you. And I think that applies to whether it's your personal life. For example, I randomly found a cat and now I own a cat. Wow. um, and so I'm now responsible for this cat. But
Mm.
that was something I didn't plan, I didn't expect. Even with my business, I didn't plan, I didn't expect, but I went with it and kind of made it into something that I'm really happy with. And yeah, that would be my advice. Be adaptable if you can.
Great. And Jeff, round it out.
Yeah, so I would say my biggest piece of life advice in general, and especially if you're considering living in a different country, whether it be for a new culture, for better food, for a new language, whatever your reason is don't take it too seriously. Like you have to look for laughter in life. I think laughter is proven in many, many ways to be super beneficial for us. And it's hard, but like don't be afraid to just step back and laugh sometimes at the failure or the hiccups or just, you need to be open to laughing at yourself for sure in
Yeah.
the situation.
Beautiful.
It's
All
really
right.
nice.
Well, guys, great. Jeff, give me your self promotion. Now's the time. Nobody stop listening right now. Just hear
Oh,
our
okay.
sales pitch. It's
This
the
is the
very
time.
end. Okay, so Jeff, give me your sales pitch.
This is perfect because I literally start class in 1 minute. So
Oh,
this was
okay,
perfect
great.
time for me. I love it. So I am a freelance language professor. I teach English online, but more relevant for people listening, I teach Spanish online. I teach mainly Latin American Spanish, but I can adapt it to Spain Spanish, right? Peninsular Spanish, as we call it, and use the vocabulary that you need, whether it be for Mexico, Colombia, Argentina, or Spain. I teach online. I'm very flexible about this. So please do feel free to reach out if you're looking to learn a new language, or if you just want to, consult about what it's like to study a language. I'm very open to trying to set you on the right path, or hopefully starting a business relationship with you and getting some new students.
Perfect.
No.
Great. Kayla, go.
All right. Sorry, Jeff. I'm going to do it really fast so that hopefully you have enough time. So I'm Kayla. My business name is KW Creative. My tagline is creative marketing for creative brands. Wow. So I work with anyone and anyone. So big businesses, small businesses, but basically, if you need help with your marketing, wherever you are, if you're in Australia, Europe, US, worldwide, check out my website, kwcreativemarketing.com. I'm also on the Instagrams.
Yeah, great. Okay, and my only pitch, I'm not pitching marketing. I'm hosting a yoga retreat next year, August 2025. So you've got a whole longer than a year to plan. It is a yoga and art retreat, and it's going to be absolutely fantastic. We're going to do tons of yoga, lots of crazy art. It's going to be an amazing group of people right by the national park. Maybe we'll see bears. If you're afraid of bears, too bad. Like we'll just get over that fear. So hope you'll come. I will share all of our links, all of our emails in whatever I share this on. Thank you guys. This has been such a great pleasure. And hopefully we will all talk to all of you very soon. Thank you for listening.
Amazing.
Bye.
Thanks so much.
Bye.